going to take about 10 seconds.
All right, heading there now.
Streaming. You're live.
Yep.
Excellent. All right, honey, on the right-hand side, I'm going to make you a host. I just admitted everybody. We're live. Change host. You're the host, Allison?
I got you. No, I don't. I'm going to do it again.
Hey, Bob.
Hello.
There you are. All right.
Okay, everybody, we're ready to go. Good evening,
Okay,
everybody. Thursday night, United Shredders Unite Biz Call. I am super, super excited. And of course, Facebook threw a wrench into the thing and is making it a little bit more challenging, a little bit more difficult as far as sharing into groups. But thank you, everyone, for joining. I am super excited for this evening to welcome my dear friend, probably my closest friend in the world, Peter Greenlaw. Peter was responsible for introducing Isagenix to me years ago. Actually, it was in 2000. I think our conversation started like in December of 03, somewhere around there. But I was a very challenging individual to commit to this whole program. But that said, the story tonight is about Peter from a standpoint of his business, how it evolved, both as he became a researcher of the researchers, but also how it developed into a business, because that was not his initial intention. So I will fast forward to today. Peter is well known within the Isagenix community, is a top leader. He's in the top 3 or 4 of all-time income earners. Because we'll be talking about income tonight, I have posted disclaimers on our Facebook page, but bottom line is that all income potential is dependent upon the individual, their skill set, their ability as far as their knowledge in the network marketing industry, obviously their ability to communicate and so on. And there are no guarantees. As well, we will be talking a lot about the products. So we must do our product disclaimer. We will not be discussing or intended to cure, treat, or what's the third person?
Diagnose.
Diagnose, there we go. Diagnose any diseases. And we have to be very careful with that because this is supplements, it's just straight food. But Peter's stories are individual to his own research, the things that he has seen with science, he probably will share, that's okay. Individual stories are our own individual stories. And that said, I would like to jump right in because we've got so much to cover. It's only 7:02, so we got 58 minutes left. Peter today is an author. He's a lecturer, speaker. He's well known through our circles. If you've been in this company for a while, I think you've seen him. Hopefully you've seen him live. You've seen his presentations. He has written 4 books with medical doctors. And if you had a chance to read his books, they're fascinating. We'll be talking about one tonight in particular, Your Third Brain. That's available on Amazon, but also he is the author of Why Diets Are Failing Us, his first book with Dr. Harper, the TETOS Protocol and the TETOS Syndrome, sort of TETOS Syndrome, the issues, TETOS, and then the TETOS Protocol. Those 4 books are available on Amazon. Fast forward again, I wanted Peter on here because he is critically important to our ER Shred. He is a mentor to me. He is a mentor to Sean Escobar. He's close friends with Tony and Randy Escobar and was with them in the very beginning. And we will dive into that. But without further ado, Peter, welcome to the call tonight. And I'm so excited to have you.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure and an honor. And anytime I get a chance to make people aware of what's really going on, then that's my whole mission in life.
Excellent. So let's dial back to when I came in. And literally, I was referred to you, similar to like Dr. Glenn Nozak's story last week. I got a hold of you, and I was very skeptical, but you were incredibly transparent, and you also were willing to get me the information that I needed to make an educated decision, even though it did take me a while, maybe about a month or so. But I did buy my 9-day kits because that's all we had. But unfortunately for me, I kind of sat on it for almost 90 days. It was kind of ridiculous. But that said, Peter, you coached me through the entire program. I remember you calling me at 6 in the morning. I've shared this story before with others. I said you wanted to know when you could speak to me and not have any interruptions and so on. I said, well, call me at 6. And of course you were in Denver and I didn't really care back then, but that was kind of my bad, but you did it. And I think that just speaks to the fact that you're willing to do whatever's required. That's what you've always taught me, do what's required. And the bottom line, without your support, because I was so toxic, I don't know if I would have ever gotten to the program, but you got me through the program and you got me to where I was at maintenance. But bottom line is that I've always said this to you. I have my life to thank because I think you did save my life. You turned my health around by being that support person. But more importantly, you, in a very ginger way, introduced me to the concept of paying it forward. I want to know, for the audience, can you share, how did you come to Isagenix and how were you invited and what made you say yes?
Well, it's kind of, this a crazy story. In my old life, I used to be in the construction business. I supplied actually very expensive kitchen cabinets, and my biggest customer who was actually a linebacker for the Oakland Raiders is the one really that turned me on to it. But my journey was only due to, I had some extreme medical challenges that conventional diet, exercise, and even pharmaceutical drugs were not doing anything. And so I went on this and I had such an unbelievable experience. Like, again, mine may not be typical. Let's make sure we're compliant. But I lost in 2 days what had taken me 8 weeks of diet and exercise 7 days a week. I went on to lose 20 pounds in 18 days and 30 pounds in a month and 40 pounds in about 7 or 8 weeks. But that's not even the good part of the story. The good part of the story is my health conditions turned around so dramatically that my doctor, he thought my test results were wrong, because my cholesterol and my heart attack risk had dropped so incredible. He said he'd never seen anything like that. And I said to myself that day, I said, if this is real, it's going to change the world. Now, I had no idea how I was going to play a role in this. I really didn't. And then another friend of mine, a gastroenterologist in Denver, I hadn't seen her in 8 weeks, and she came up to me and said, "Oh my God, Peter, are you sick?" I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "Well, do you have cancer?" I said, "No," because I'd lost all this weight so rapidly. And so the way it really happened is she said, "Look," and I told her what I was doing. And she said, "Oh my gosh, I've been using this on all my gastrointestinal patients for the last 2 months, coincidentally." And she said, the man that invented it, who was John Anderson, was coming. I didn't know who he was then, was coming to Denver in 2 weeks. And there were 20 doctors there. So internists, OBGYNs, primary care physicians, cardiologists, you name it. And I was the only layperson.
And
she wanted me to come. What?
Those that don't know, it was Dr. Becky Nitrajan for the
Right.
old timers. We got some people on here that are from the very beginning, Peter.
Okay. Well, anyway, but the point was that I told him my story, and he said, "Look, I want to talk to you after dinner." And I said, "Okay, that's cool." Not having any idea what he was going to do. And he said, "Look, I know that I've invented this. I know I've invented something's going to change the world. I'll never forget that," when he said that to me. And he points right at me and he goes, "And I need someone like you to go tell the world about it." Well, I laughed and I said, "Well, that's really great. One little problem. I was a finance major in college, and hell, I don't even know what a calorie is." He said, "We will teach you." And that's how it started. So 500 books later, 10,000 hours of research, 2 million miles just on United. And I have literally worked with and met some of the top medical doctors, oncologists, molecular biologists. I don't say that to brag, because I am the researcher of the researchers. And for all of you, I'm not the expert, but I became an expert on the experts. And so everything that I share comes from this incredible sort of connection, collaboration, whatever you want to call it, from these world-class experts. Even to the point in all my books, I was going to say, it's their information that I've laid out generically. And what you got, Isagenix is the fulfillment company that meets those really, really critical components. Okay, Bob, sorry, I didn't mean, I just want to get that in before I forgot.
We just have a lot to cover tonight. So basically with the ER Shred business group, we're about paying it forward. And this is the essence of the whole story, and why my objective is to invite people to take a look in knowing that the people that are on this tonight have already had amazing results. They've already been like, whoa, they've had the wow factor. I like to say that with Sean adding the elimination reset to your protocol, which is the old John Anderson way, the way Glenn mentioned, we're all doing it the John Anderson way. It's elevated, it's enhanced the system. such that everybody on here is getting that wow factor. Oh my God, I feel good. So I want to bring it back to when you first started sharing. You basically took John up on, hey, I want you to be the guy, go out there and share this to the world. And I came in, you had been in this about 9 months. Now, here's the thing. What really fascinated me the most, because I'm a numbers guy, is that I wanted to know what was motivating you. Like, are you in it for the money? What is the guy trying to sell me? What's his stake in the game? You know, who is this person calling me? And the long and short, I did ask you at this time, you'd been at it 9 months, pretty hard, sharing it with everybody. You told me that, I said, how much? I go, Peter, I got to ask, how much money are you making at this thing? And you said $500, about $500 a month.
True story.
Now, at that point in time, you told me your goal was for the family to what? To go on vacation or?
Yep. Yeah, I looked at it like, basically that was like, 500 a month was, $6,000. That's a pretty nice vacation. I never thought beyond that. I never thought this would become a career. I never thought what happened by me basically going on this, having this life-changing result. And then really all I did, because I didn't know anything, was to share my result, to pay it forward. That's how I built this thing.
I want you to, so we're going to back it up a little bit, but I want you to share the story. The fact is, you did have network marketing experience from previous companies.
And it would have really had to improve a lot to just suck. It was horrible.
So
I hated it.
Question. Did you have any success with any other company?
Zero. Negative. Oh, I lost tons of money. I bought sales aids and all that kind of stuff. And so the only reason I did it was because of my physical condition. It was literally, I was at the end of my rope because I went conventional. I was working out 7 days a week. I was doing 1,400 calories a day. I was taking drugs for my high cholesterol. Well, what do you do when it doesn't work for you? Thank God. I honest to God believe I'm alive today because of this. Because nothing else was working. I mean, how could I think anything else, right?
I want to share the story with the fact that you initially were terrified of sharing this with your wife, Sarah. Mm-hmm. And the reason is because of your previous experiences. Do you want to share that story? How?
Yeah, well, we'd lost all kinds of money in previous network marketing companies. And I actually signed up and hid the product under a tarp in my garage for about 5 or 6 months and never put it in my body. And then when I had this kind of epiphany with my customer, he signed me up. I didn't even know what that meant. I didn't know about auto. All I know is this stuff started arriving and I'm going like, holy smokes. I didn't even know how to stop auto ship, but I had not put, and that was October of 2002. I didn't even put a drop in my body until the following July of 2003. That's the real story. And
then you had your results.
What?
I'm saying then you did the product in July and had your results. At what time did you bring it to Sarah's attention? Or she noticed your changes, your physical changes?
Oh, that was the first, was like the first day, like 10. So that would have been like the end of June, like right away. And so, but she was, she wanted to lose some weight and she thought that maybe if this could help me, that was great. So that was the motivation. It wasn't some grand scheme. Oh my God, we're going to have a sailboat and a Rolls Royce and all that kind of crazy stuff. No, that was,
right.
Was never, ever. My first paycheck was $7.50. True story. $7.50.
And that was basically for all of us. It was pretty much the same.
Yeah, you got a PIP for the 9 day. It was $10, but they took $2.50 out of your card, so you're left with $7.50. I guess you could buy a couple. I don't drink coffee, but if you drink coffee, maybe you get a couple Starbucks. I mean, you have to understand, it was so archaic. It was like there was no way in hell that I ever thought that this was going to turn into what it turned into, and it happened innocently. Right? Because I just had a great result and shared it. What?
So when did you meet Tony Escobar?
Let's see. Well, that was really early on. So after I met John Anderson, which that would have been October of 2003. Mm-hmm. So I went in on July, August, September. And when he said to me, when I said, I don't know what a calorie is, and he said, we will teach you, the first person he sent me to was Tony Escobar. And I literally drove over to Salt Lake City with literally legal pads because there was nothing in those days. And he started teaching me, and I longhanded. I had about 4 or 5 of them filled at the end of 5 days. And it was really overwhelming because I didn't know any of this stuff. But gradually I began to understand it. And then my first presentation from that point would have been like the following February or March. So it took me about from, let's say that was September until the following March before I felt qualified that I could do, a presentation, although we didn't know 1/1,000,000th of what we know now.
And that was March of 04 when I started.
Right.
Okay. And as that evolved, you, just so people know, it's kind of an interesting story in that you had your Peter and Sarah Greenlaw group, but that there's also an individual within the company that left that you, your partner, Dan, and Matt Rockwell, Dan Gibbons, decided to purchase. And that is now what is considered the Greenlaw group, because people will ask, they see the Greenlaw group and then they see, Peter and Sarah. And so you do, the interesting thing here is that I think you're still the only person within Isagenix that's done this, is that you've maxed out 2 different individual sites. You've maxed out the Greenlaw group and the original, and then also your personal site.
Right. Yeah, that's the only time, because it wouldn't happen now because they didn't have reentries in those days. So you just went on your initial spot. And when we say initial, so that's still 600 on one side, 300 on the other. So we did it first in the Greenlaw group, and then I did it personally. So I'm telling you, it's all crazy to me now, even I look back. It
is. So one of the things so when I was involved, we first started, you recognized with Matt early on that you had to create a coaching system.
Yes.
And at that time, we called it Cleansing for Best Results.
Correct.
I was one of the guinea pigs, and we were working on that as a group, as a team. But then it evolved to basically go cleanse.
Right.
And what happened when that time frame? When did you see that when did the immense growth? I know when it took off. I'm trying to get you to say it. The growth that took place in the Greenlaw group was with Go Cleanse initially. It was Cleansing for Best Results, but then it really. Can you lay out the time frame for that? Because it wasn't an overnight success, but it did.
No. Well, I'll give you the real numbers. When we started, and that would have been January of 04. It was cycling around 25 times a week. That's still pretty darn good. But we also paid, as you know, Bob, you thought it was out of my mind that we paid a huge premium. You can't even do that anymore. So we were grandfathered in. So from that point in January, I can tell you exactly, it took us about 18 months from that point to make $1 million in commissions. All right. So, but we started, there were 20, but you got to understand, we had to do a lot of work and build it up, and we created coaching. So the coaching occurred like later, maybe late, it was like December 2004, because we implemented it in about 2005. And that's when it just exploded. I mean, it just went insane, because again, the whole system was based on what? The only thing we knew how to do was get people great results. Because in those days, you had to sign up 9 people to do one cycle, because it was a 100 BV per 9-day kit. And that was all there was. So if you wanted to make like $500, you had to sign up 90 people, 90. So we figured the only way we could do this was to create a system that would duplicate. And that was coaching. Yeah, it would scale. Otherwise it wouldn't work. And so we worked on it for about 7 or 8 months before we literally had the system. And the internet was so new then, it was still DSL, and it was going all those noises, and it was crazy, but we made it work anyway. And there was nothing like it, because basically what was happening in 9 days, people were getting an audio recording every single day as they went through it. And Tony Escobar was on there, John Anderson was on there, Dr. Becky Nutrajima. So it was pretty damn unique back then, because, we were handing out 8-track cassettes, then we were handing out CDs, and eventually we got to DVDs. I mean, that's how archaic it was, So I don't even think you can buy a DVD today,
Just to tie this back to ER Shred, I mean, I know the story, but Tony approached you about coaching Sean.
Correct.
Can you tell the story for the group?
Well, I think it's really hard for a dad to work with a sibling, although, my youngest son's on here, I'm so proud of him. He's a real warrior. He's killing it, but and so Tony asked, because Tony is the one who started my education. and followed me through. You know, one thing I've been insistent on in my whole career is I want to be scientifically accurate, because I'm not a medical doctor and I'm not a PhD. So I want to be bulletproof. But I always say, look, this is the research of other people that I've discovered and I brought to the world. So basically what I did with Sean is I said, look, just follow these simple steps. And I'll be there. I'll hold your hand. It's kind of like teaching you how to ride a bike, you know? And he kind of stumbled in because, you know, there were, I mean, back in those days, I'll share with you guys. I mean, because we didn't have pre-cleanse days or detox days, okay? I mean, people would, like the night before, they'd go out and have ribs and cheesecake and whatever. And the next morning, they were projectile vomiting, you know? And so they weren't kind of calling us up, you know, they're at home, honey, where's that DVD? I'm like, you know, they couldn't go to work. People were going to the emergency room because they were, you know, they were really having a niacin flush. They didn't know what it was in those days. So we're freaking out going, oh my God, are we going to kill people? I mean, what the hell? And so once Sean got a little bit, his feet wet just a little bit, he said, wow, this is really working. And to his credit, you know, he took it as it was he took it as if his life, his financial life depended on it and just followed it. That's it. And so, you know, he was, you know, one of the early adopters, and it was kind of my way to pay back Tony and Randy for what they had shared with me. They didn't have to do that. Yeah, I was part of their team, but, you know, when I met him, I was cycling like, you know, once a week, maybe. So it wasn't exactly some big kingfish when I went over there and he was willing to teach me, but I was so damn neurotically curious. I literally was. I was like, I was going like, what? What do you mean this is what this does? You mean this ingredient does that? Because I knew we had a brain and heart and lungs, but the rest of it was, go ahead.
One of the lessons that I want to get through to the audience is that, you know, I think initially everybody would look at you and say, oh, well, that's Peter Greenlaw. He's a researcher of the researchers. He's a scientist. And the reality is you're no different than myself or anybody else coming in and having that experience. It was the passion that drove you and your curiosity to become wanting to become the researcher of the researchers.
Right.
Now, part of this story, this is back in when I started in talking with you, is that we realized we had to get a spokesperson to go out there and communicate this to the world. And I think everybody just looked at everyone and said, well, Peter knows this more than anybody. He's been trained by Tony, and, you know, he could get in front of the room. And we called it at that time, Toxicity in America and the Importance of Nutritional Cleansing. That was the first seminar. And the intent was to go out there and tell the world. And that's where you had come out and helped Glenn and Einan. You had a team in New Jersey, you had a team in Chicago, and you flew wherever it was required to do these meetings to get the momentum to keep building it.
Correct.
And one of the lessons I want to share is that Sean was an early adopter, and Sean saw it. He saw his mom and dad. They came from the industry. He knew the business, and he said, wow, this really works. The light bulbs went off, and he went full out. And he was our youngest millionaire in the company. They've done an incredible job, and everybody's obviously very, very familiar with Sean and Crystal Escobar. Myself, on the other hand, here I came in, I had great results. My doctor told me to stay on it. And I remember telling you, Peter, man, you saved my life. My doctor loves this stuff. How can I repay you? And I was blown away, because I'll just let you tell the story. What did you tell me?
Pay it forward.
You basically said, pay it forward. Said, Bob, all I want you to do is do for someone else that I've done for you.
Right.
Just pay it forward.
Yep.
Now, oddly enough, in that early 2000 time frame, that movie was out, Pay It Forward.
Yeah, I love that movie.
It's a great movie. And if you haven't seen it, it's just called Pay It Forward. I think it came out in 2000, 2001.
Tearjerker.
Literally, it's our business model. And the intent is that you just wanted me to help others get a good result.
Yep.
And then, of course, we started utilizing the system, and things were growing. So as you started on your national tour and your speaking engagements, you became you became very close with John Anderson. He was your go-to guy for all the research and science and so on. But he also introduced you to Dr. Dennis Harper, who at the time was our head of the medical advisory board.
Right.
And you started discussing writing your first book. And I know that was around 2006, 7.
Yeah, exactly.
Time frame. And again, the book didn't come out till like 2010.
10. Yep.
But that was your first jump into, hey, I'm going to be an author. People know you today because you've appeared on Windy City, you've appeared on a lot of television programs, you've discussed it. A lot of that was your personal drive to promote your book, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So it was literally starting in 2010, you basically started flying everywhere to promote your book and to try to get on radio, television, wherever you could to become a mouthpiece.
Correct.
Okay. And the reason why I mention this is I think this is, as this started to happen, Peter, this is when you started meeting a lot of other doctors and other scientists,
Researchers,
and being
yeah.
able to gather more information. You had developed a good friendship with Dr. John Gray, of
Right.
the author from Mars, or Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus book.
Yep.
And John is steeped in this. But tell me how the process, what went off in your mind to decide, hey, I really want to get to know these doctors and I really want to study it. And what drove you beyond that first book?
It was a neurotic curiosity. I was literally neurotic about this. I knew that the more that I was learning, the more I realized that I didn't know. But what was cool about it was that I started to connect the dots. And you know, Bob, I've said this for a long time, and some people that know me that I see on the call, like Yadana, et cetera, hi Yadana, would know that I've said for a long time that, you know, my mission was to make the world aware of what's available. And so the more that I learned, the more I could make available. And you know, Bob, in all four of my books, you'll never hear the word, there's no mention of the name of the company, but I lay out the menus generically that these world-class experts taught me. They don't have anything to do with the company. They just said, look, if you want the best elements, you know, so I went to a guy like John Gray and I said, hey, what's this? And then I went to, other people that I just simply connected the dots. But I would do things like I'd hear someone on a pod, whatever they were in those days. And hell, I'd call them up and I'd get them on the phone, and then I'd get on an airplane. I'd fly there. And I remember my first, incredible foray was with someone by the name of Dr. Doris Rapp. I know Donna knows her. She wrote a book called Our Toxic World, which I, as far as I know, was the first book ever written on toxins. But she was an allergist, an internist, an OB. She had 5 medical degrees, had been on Oprah 20 times. And I went down and I spent a week. She used to call me Sonny. She goes, Sonny, I'm going to teach you a lot of stuff. And I swear to God, that's how it happened. But I just called her up. And I said, look, this is what I'm doing. I love your work. And she said, oh, come on down. She lived in Scottsdale. I went down there and spent a week with her. And then she said, look, you need to go to talk to this person. So then I go to talk to that person. And that person said, no, you need to go talk to this scientist. And, I've flown more than 2 million miles on United. So I guess I put it to good use at some point in time.
So the audience can understand, and it's kind of interesting how you can always look back in hindsight and say, okay, there's a reason why it happened that way. And a lot of times it's fortunate. I mean, if you look back on it, I remember there was a big debate on, can I promote the company name in the books? Nope. And at that time, so people understand, in order to get into corporations, which is one of the things that we did, we had to give a generic presentation, and you could not promote a company or a business. And you had some other advisors that I know of as well suggest the same thing. Peter, you either can become, a peddler of your company, more or less, or if you want to be taken seriously and be a researcher of the researchers, here's what we suggest you do. And as it turned out, it became a windfall from the standpoint of not only building awareness of this amazing nutritional intermittent fasting system, but also from a standpoint of getting you in with some of the top scientists, as I mentioned earlier. And I wanted to quickly, because I know we're going to go through this time quickly, I wanted to mention, if it wasn't for Peter Greenlaw, we would not have Isagenesis or Product B. And you got to understand, a lot of people have come into this company in the last handful of years, and I don't think a lot of people are aware of that. And just to show you, if you're open to the opportunity, or if you're present, and you keep your eyes open, as you've taught me, Peter, you will see things, as you said, I hear a podcast, or I read an article. I mean, and have no fear. You'll just call them up. So I have a yoga teacher that came into my organization. That was my yoga teacher that had amazing results, that had an autoimmune issue. Again, not making any claims, had a wonderful, wonderful experience on this nutritional intermittent fast. And you came into Chicago to do a presentation in her home, and she was all excited. And it happened to have, it was a total rain out. We had like massive lightning storms, right?
Nobody showed up. It's like great PR
So,
thing, and not one person showed up,
we-
except for you and me and Robin.
And that's the thing, is that's another thing we'll tell people. Hey, it's a big joke, but a lot of people will have a private meeting. You put out the big, spread, and you're going to have everybody come over. It's going to be a great event, and nobody shows up. So the good news from that happening, again, it was gratuitous, is that Robin said, oh my God, there's this DVD from Dr. Sears that I want Peter to watch. And that was your introduction to being aware of telomeres and Dr. Bill Andrews. So this is the interesting part. You literally watched that DVD with me and said, how do I get a hold of this guy? And I said, well, we can just Google it and find out where he's at. And why don't you tell the audience the story of you going to see Dr. Andrews and how you were able to get a meeting with him?
Well, after that day, I literally, once we got the phone number, I called his office every single day, 5 days a week for 8 weeks. And ironically, after 8 weeks, his admin finally said, look, he'll give you 5 minutes tomorrow morning. I found out later they were laughing about it. They thought you're either a quack or a stalker. We figured if he talked to you, at least you'd go away. So I got him on the phone and he said, this is Dr. Andrews. You have 4 minutes and 59 seconds. I'll never forget it. Well, we ended up talking for about 2 hours. I flew out to Reno where their office was, spent the entire day with him. And they went through all this incredible science, right, about aging and telomeres. And I don't have time to go into that whole story. But anyway, I'll speed it up. But because I had a month or two, I scheduled, there were people in Reno that wanted me to come and speak. Well, I thought, well, I'm going to go there. Let's do a talk. All right. So at the end of the day, I was there all day from like 8 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon. And I just turned to him and said, look, I'd love for you to come to my talk tonight. You can help incorporate your science into my talk. There was no product. There was no agenda. It was just pure science because it was so damn fascinating that they had discovered the gene that causes us to age. I mean, that's like a pretty big deal, right? So I'd done about 900 lectures at that point. I don't normally get nervous. So I'll never forget, big Holiday Inn. There was an aisle down the center and there were, a couple hundred people. And at about 5 minutes to 7 on the very front row, the one seat left was open. He walks in and sits down. Everyone started sweating because friggin' Einstein walked in the room. But after that was over, my talk, he came up to me and he said, look, and I basically talked about, intermittent nutritional fasting, which is really what you're doing. It never was a cleanse, but that's another story. And he said to me, look, I'm an ultra marathon runner. I run 80 miles a week in training. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I eat organic all day, but I got 15 pounds around my middle. No matter what I do, I can't lose. He went on it. He called me on the 12th morning and said, are you trying to kill me? It's the true story. I said, what are you talking about? He said, there's no way medically or scientifically what just happened to me is even possible. I've lost 15 pounds in 11 days. And I want to know what the hell's in this stuff. So now he's asking me questions with way above my pay grade. So I called up John Anderson. I said, hey, have you ever heard of Dr. Andrews or telomeres? He says, no. I said, Google it and call me back in a half hour. So I put my phone down. I swear to God, it was like 5 minutes later. And it's John. He doesn't even say hello to me. He goes, you get that guy on the phone right now. And I was on that 3-way call that lasted a couple hours. And then they agreed 2 months later, we all met in Reno. And I'll give you the real short version. They did a whole presentation for John Anderson at the end of the day, and they'd spent $36 million in research trying to find a pharmaceutical drug to interfere or help telomeres. And John turns to him and said, look, I know you spent $36 million, but you've wasted your money. The answer's in the ground. Well, they were damn skeptical. Well, so that was July 3rd, 2010. September 5th of 2010, John sends to him 15 compounds, and one of them was the original, what was called product B that became Isagenix. Now, they were still skeptical. I remember I was on the phone call and they said, look, you're either the smartest person in the world or you have won the equivalent of 3 lotto jackpots in a day because we've tested 250,000 chemicals and we found 100 that interfere with telomeres. You've sent us 15 and one of them, and John says, stand by. So 2 weeks later, he sends them 25 more compounds and 5 of them registered above 0 on this scale. And so myself and John Anderson, we were the first 3 humans ever to ingest it. Now, I didn't know if I was going to grow like 7 feet tall or have 2 heads, but they assured me that it was safe. But that was that's how it was created. And it wasn't until 6 or 7 months later when they appointed me, thanks for volunteering, to go and meet with the Coovers and Jim Pierce and Kevin Adams at that time, who was the president. They had no idea that we were even working on this, okay? And I went in and presented it to them, and I thought they were going to fall out of their chairs. They couldn't even, what do you mean, you know? So that's why you have Isagenesis today. And if I hadn't been this nerdy researcher, if I hadn't, think about it, I called that guy 5 days a week for 8 weeks until finally he agreed to see me. And the rest is history.
Oh, I've always said this to anybody who will listen. I said, Peter chops wood and carries water better than anyone I've ever seen.
Thanks.
And you always share. Well, you also tell me this is kind of a good thing as far as its mindset. So what it gets down to is when your purpose, when your passion finds your purpose.
Yep.
And you became passionate about this system because it saved your life.
Correct.
Or had an impact on your life. And when you paid it forward, you thought, oh my God, I can change the world. John Anderson, right. I think this is going to change the world.
No, can I just, let me hit that point once. So the first lecture I did was in California, actually with Yadana, and we was at a doctor's office. And I remember there were 2 people there, and I came up boldly and I said, I've come for one reason tonight. And they go, what's that? And I said, I'm going to change the world. Well, once they stopped laughing and I did the presentation, Yadana could tell the story. Then they came up to me and said, oh my God, I wish my brother, my cousin, my uncle, where the hell did you learn all this stuff, you know, et cetera. And honest to God, I've never, you know, Bob, I've never backed down from that. That's what I said to myself that day when I got those results in my doctor's office. I said, if this is real, it's going to change the world. Hell, I didn't know anything about the ingredient. All I knew was, my God, I'd lost 40 pounds and my cholesterol had crashed and I got off of meds, and I'm going like, wow, this is the coolest thing ever. See, I think I was too dumb. It was like just blind him. It was like I was ignorance on fire. I didn't know anything else.
I know, and this is, again, just because people are in here considering either getting their products paid for, or some people are considering doing the business. You did learn some life lessons in your past that I know served you well with your mindset.
100%.
One of them, so prior to this to Isagenix, you had your own contracting business.
Yeah.
Right? And so tell me the story of the 50-50. Why don't you share that with the group?
Well, so I did new construction, okay, and I learned early on that if I got in my car, I created something called Drive the Grid, that if I went out there and you look for a house being framed, everybody knows what a house being framed is. And so you had 2 choices. If you drive by the house, your chances of selling it are 0. If you get out of your car, the worst you can do is 50-50. And when I did this, that's exactly what I applied to it. Only this was way better because like 90%, you know, I lost the way. I mean, it was like shooting ducks in the game preserve or something. It was so easy based on what I had done before. But that mentality of, you know, that's what I tell, you know, people are chicken to call someone. I said, well, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? The worst you can do is 50-50. Hell, if you could get 50-50 odds in Vegas, they wouldn't be building those big casinos. That's how significant it is. And Bob, you're right. I did a lot of personal development because the biggest thing holding me back was me. It was what are called limiting beliefs. And it's sad, a number of things. Number one, most people have no idea how bad they feel until they realize how good they could feel. I find most people live what's called a less than lifestyle, again, because they don't know what to do. And the thing is, I always say this, I work in the impossible until it's possible. I mean, the only way you're going to stop me, you better shoot me because I'm getting up, I'm coming, but not in an obnoxious way, not selling people. I always tell, if you have to sell this, then you don't even get it. All we want you to do, turn your experience into your pay it forward story. That's it. It's that simple. Because think of what it's done for you. Well, how many other people are living in what I call quiet desperation? They don't know what else to do. So they're on, what do? They're on medication. And I'm not against medication. But if there's a way to lessen it or eliminate it, why wouldn't anyone want to do that? And I can tell you this, I'll sort of give you a sneak preview. There's some research that's going to be coming out in the next 3 months that I promise you 100% will change the world. It will change. As a matter of fact, what if everything we've been taught about diet, nutrition, and exercise was 100% wrong? Not a little bit wrong, totally wrong. It is going to make such an impact. It is literally like what Steve Jobs said. You talk about being a disruptor. This is going to shake the earth on its axis. And it's absolute hard scientific evidence. That's all I'm going to tell you right now.
I guess what we can say from that is it will be released sometime this summer.
Yep.
But what it will do for everybody that is a scientific mind is it will give the basis for the ER shred, why the ER shred's doing what it's doing.
Exactly.
Perfect. So for those that need the proof, or you're talking to a chiropractor or whatever, you don't have Peter available to you, you'll have a peer-reviewed paper, clinical trial that will be, not clinical trial, but a peer-reviewed study you can actually share with people.
Yeah.
I do. So basically, one of the things we don't have a lot of time, but you mentioned personal development.
Mm-hmm.
And I know one of the things that you did for me, and this is kind of something that was really, it was an aha moment for myself. And that is, I had thought that in the 80s, when I was first introduced to Zig Ziglar, and then it was Tony Robbins in 1990 and so on, I had done a lot of personal development. But by the time I had met you, Peter, and we were talking, I'm like, I've been there, done that. And, no, I'm not going to do that again. And it's the awareness of, is that life is a journey. And when you go back and revisit these principles, you have a different life experiences. You're in a different place. And so even though it may be the same programs or something somewhat similar, your experience will be totally different. Agreed? But one of the
I think it's the biggest thing that, like I said, people fight much harder for their limitations than their possibilities. I'm no different than anyone. I'm no different than anyone else on this call tonight.
But the biggest
except I had a passion and a hunger and a desire that I wanted to know more. And then I wanted to share it with the world. I mean, I did. That's what I've done.
So what I wanted to share with the audience is that the biggest thing you did for me, outside of introducing me to this nutritional system that changed my life entirely. I mean, I met my second wife in this program. I mean, totally different, obviously, but the biggest favor you did to me outside of having the physical and the transformation that I had is the fact you pushed me to do personal development. Even though I said, hey, I've been there, done that, I've done it. You said, no, just trust me. I remember you telling me this. It's out in Denver. It's a 3-day weekend. And if you don't like it, I'll buy your plane ticket. I'll reimburse you the money.
100%.
You just got to promise me you do this for me. And then when I got there, you pulled me aside and said, do me a favor. I love you like a brother. Don't sit in the back of the room with your arms crossed, because I know what you're going to do. You think you already have this thing figured out. You think you're smarter than everybody in the room. I want you to sit down, and I'm going to dare you. He said, I want you to sit down in the front row. Nobody takes the front row seats, but I want you sitting right down in the front row for the next 3 days, and then you tell me what you think. And that was profound, because I did what you said, dive into the deep end of the pool with both feet. And it was an amazing weekend. And then, of course, then we went on and we did Clemmer and so on, the advanced trainings, and I went through the whole program. But you developed SSCT with Kirk Metz and Dan Gibbons and others, which we touched on last week with Glenn Nozak. But I think the importance of this is that if you really want to take this business seriously, it's really, really important to do some work on yourself, however you choose to do that. But here's the proof's in the pudding. Out of that 70 people in the first group in SSCT, I think we're close to over 50 people who have obtained the level of millionaire status.
Yeah, that's true.
Which means they have earned cumulatively $1 million in their career with this company.
Right.
And that's fascinating. 50 out of 70, that's a pretty good return. What was it that you saw back then that you recognized that personal development would play such an important role?
Well, I even say, look, if Tiger Woods has a swing coach, then who the hell am I to think that I don't need? It's just like the best way to think about it, I know we got even some personal trainers on here or people that work out. You go to the gym and you work out by yourself, you get a personal trainer, they're going to kick your butt in a way that you would never push yourself. Let me give you the definition of what I think personal development is. It really is to get you what you say but it's getting you to do something you would never do in order to get you what you say you want. Now that's not illegal. It's all still ethical. They're not doing anything to you. It's up to you. That's why I had you sit in the front row, because I knew that experience was a lot different than sitting in the last row. It's like you couldn't hide. And if you really wanted to take yourself on, I mean, my success, I would say, is this, that I had unshakable belief. Once I had that experience, no one was going to take it away from me. And I think that was really important. Now, I had enough personal development that I guess I had enough chutzpah or whatever to go out and do I had no credentials. It didn't matter, because what I was learning, you couldn't learn it at Harvard or Yale or Berkeley or Stanford, because it was so new. I mean, you realize, that, Bob, when I started, there'd never been a study done on human beings that we were accumulating toxins in our body till late 2005 by Mount Sinai Medical School. So there we are talking about removing, we were speculating, we didn't know. In the beginning, everybody thought it was just a fast weight loss program, which it isn't, it never was. So it's really more a matter of that mindset. Wow. It's kind of like, if you believe you can do it, somebody needs to, Tom C, you need to, okay. But if you believe that you can do it, you really can. You look at the things that have happened in this world with one person who believed, it's crazy.
People are asking, SSCT was an acronym. It was called Super Synchronous Cycling Team, something like that. I can't remember it. Glenn had nailed it the other day. But what it was, basically, it was a program that was patterned after the mastermind class for Clemmer and Associates, or Psi Systems. Psi Systems had their mastermind class. Clemmer, I know I think it was called Sam class or
yeah, it was Sam class. Yeah,
that we went through. And this was basically a 30-day program, or 90-day program.
90 days.
Mastermind with the 70 individuals. And for Rod, that you're asking, it was something that Dan, who is a facilitator for Psi Systems, I believe, he and his partners and so on, with you involved, you guys put this whole thing together, along with Kirk Metz. And this is the beauty of Isagenix back then. Even you and Kirk Metz were not financially connected.
No financial connection.
Very similar to ER Shred, the 70 people in that room, very few of us were financially connected. I mean, I was connected to you, and that was about it. But anyway, the benefit of that is, I think you established the baseline mindset of what we need to do and what's required, and also to basically get out of our own way. So, I mean, nothing's easy. I look at what Sean has done, and we know his story with the church, but that was an amazing training ground for him to go door knocking, because no doesn't mean no. It just means not yet. And it didn't bother him, and he wasn't embarrassed to get a no. It's like 50-50, right?
Well, my construction, my 50-50, same deal. Same thing.
So I guess the message is that this is the funny part, because I know I want to get into Dr. Ruggiero and incubating the shakes, but what you understood is that the importance was how you shared your story, how you said it, right? It's just not what you say, it's how you say it.
Correct.
But it is basically having that mindset of, I got to speak to as many people as possible. Mm-hmm. And the more people that I talk to, the better odds I have at success.
Simple.
So by the time, because we have jumped ahead quite a bit, you hit momentum. And I know you said you made the first $1 million with the Greenlaw Group after it was 9 months. After you,
it was longer. It was about 18 months.
Longer than about 18 months. 3 years, a year and a half. I'm sorry. The power of the leverage of this business model, and this is the part that will blow people's mind, is that the hardest is just to get to 10 cycles.
Oh yeah.
And to get to 20, it's twice as easy. And then to get to 40, it gets even easier. Then 40 to 80, but you start getting that momentum.
Correct.
I don't even know what the number is right now, but I know that the Greenlaw Group cumulatively is that you have now made, in hindsight, over 25 million, I think, right?
Yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Peter and Sarah Group?
7.5 million.
Okay, so you're over 32.5 million now.
Yeah.
Now, here's the crazy thing. I don't think you ever in your wildest dreams thought that was possible, but that wasn't your vision, was it?
What do you mean? I still can't believe it.
So the message here from a standpoint of people want to identify with how to be successful, right? And a lot of times we tend to think of the end result. So, I want to make 32 million. That's not how to do it.
No.
What your complete vision is I want to change the world.
Yep.
And you were going to do it helping one person at a time.
Yep, exactly. So I did it.
And you did it to this day.
So I still do it.
And then, and you still do it. And Colin now has learned from you, and Colin's blowing it up. And
he's better than me.
So my excitement is that I think that we basically have taken our old system and we put it on steroids based upon the results that you've seen in me. You have seen a change in me, I would think, in the last 6 months. Colin, your son, he's lit up. I want to talk about the fact that because of you taking chances and flying around, tell us the quick story of how you were invited to speak at Autism One.
Yeah, well, someone saw me on television, and then I got a call from Autism One that was actually hosted in Chicago. It's one of the largest autism conferences in the world. And I knew a little bit about autism, but not that much. So I called up my good friend, Dr. John Gray, who was writing a book on autism. And I flew out there and I spent 2 or 3 days with him. And then he said, look, there's this new breakthrough in Europe, and there's this company. He said, they might be there. Well, lo and behold, I went there, and the very first day, I'm a guy like on time is late. So I'm there a day ahead because I don't want to miss. This is a big deal for me. Okay. There's 125 physicians from all over the world, and I'm the only layperson speaking. So being late probably wouldn't be a great option. But anyway, so I met Dr. Marco Ruggiero, and everybody has to understand this. He has nothing to do with Isagenix. He never did. Okay. He is one of the most brilliant oncologists and molecular biologists in the world. He's worked with 2 men who won the Nobel Prize in medicine, and he's published over 225 peer-reviewed studies in the biggest medical journals in the world over the last 30 years. So I met him, and ironically, he loved my research. My second book called TDOS syndrome, he was all about it. But I think you all need to know how the incubation process came about, or I think everyone's really curious about that, right? Again, one of these other amazing stories. So he and I got together, we really hit it off, and we decided at the end of Autism One that we're going to write this book called Your Third Brain, which is, it's not a trick title, that's for real. And so he came, so this was May, oh, there it is, yep. That was May of 2014, 14 or 15. Anyway, I lost track of all the time. But anyway, what happened is that he came out to Denver, and then we flew around the country because I knew a lot of oncologists in Berkeley, and actually Bob introduced me to some in Chicago. And we started to write the book. But one day he saw me making a shake, and he said, hey, can I have a canister? I said, sure, Well, unbeknownst to me, I didn't understand that. So this is 2015. So about 4 years before, in Europe, they developed this test where they could take any protein and they could analyze of the 20 amino acids that are either in vegetables or in proteins. The only thing that mattered was you got all 20, but what percentage of the 20 was your body able to utilize? And that's actually technically called net nitrogen utilization. But all it means in English is that somebody's...
Why can't I mute this guy? Allison?
Okay.
Can you mute Tom C?
This is important. Okay. Anyway, I want everyone to understand how significant this is. So this was a very huge breakthrough in nutritional science. Because no one knew before. You'd eat a steak, you'd eat chicken, you assumed, okay, well, I'm getting all these amino acids. Well, that's not the truth. As a matter of fact, any animal protein, the maximum absorption is about 30%, 30 out of 100. Vegetables are even lower. You take something like a pea protein on its own, it's about 10%. So that's why, for example, if some of you are non-dairy people, you'll notice that it has pea protein, rice protein, chia seeds, et cetera, to bring up the amino acid absorption possibility. So Ruggiero, the reason he wanted to look at the shake, and I'll explain that in a second, there was a specific ingredients on there that he'd worked with the guy who won the Nobel Prize in medicine in 1986. Those ingredients are called proteases. They're right on your label of the Isolene Pro. And the only thing he analyzed was the Isolene Pro. And there was a reason for that, because he liked the relationship between the amount of sugar and the amount of protein. So if you notice, like Isolene, which is still fine, and you could actually incubate it if you wanted to, but you look at the sugar in comparison to the protein, it's way higher. When the Isolene Pro, if you look at that, it's a lot lower from a percentage standpoint of view. So that's why the Isolene Pro has become the gold standard, because that's the only thing he tested. Okay. So he took my shake, and then he went to Whole Foods and Trader Joe's and ordered online, and actually had a shake that he was using with his cancer patients in Europe from Switzerland, an undenatured whey protein. So undenatured, for all of you that don't know, just means it's not pasteurized. Okay. So he tested all 20 in cold water after 5 minutes. Okay. The absorption of some of the nationally advertised brands was as low as 5% out of 100. 5. Okay. There were some that were 8, 10, 12, but our Isolene Pro in the cold water, which I've been doing for 15 years, and I'm not going to tell anybody not to do it, okay? But from a science standpoint of view, my colleague, who, understand, has no dog in this hunt. He has no reason to even do this. The only reason he did it was motivation, was for his cancer patients. So then he took all the shakes, as you know, to make them in room temperature or up to like 100 degrees, mix them, let them sit for 45 minutes, and then he retested all 20. Well, at the end of that 45 minutes, 19 out of 20 of those shakes, their number, the net nitrogen utilization, didn't change at all. So if it was 5%, it was still 5%. So it wasn't the hot water, it wasn't the time. It had to be something else. And that something else were those protease enzymes. Because the Isolene Pro, these are his words, his research, went from 15% absorption to 90%. The highest absorption of any protein ever tested. That's why you're having such spectacular results. But more importantly, I know some of you had challenges with Isolene shakes before. You were gassy, you were bloated, etc. Yeah, because you were having a reaction to what? The whey protein or the casein protein or the milk protein. Well, guess what Ruggiero also proved? At the end of the 45 minutes, there was no whey protein left. There was no casein protein left. There was no protein of any kind. So you basically were drinking liquid amino acids. That's why, for those of you who struggled, and let me say this, nothing's 100%. There's still, I run into people every now and then have such severe dairy allergies that even though you've only got about 10% of the whey protein or the milk products left, they still can have a reaction to that. But again, let me say again, he has no dog in this hunt. He doesn't work for Isagenix. He has nothing to do. The only reason he did this was for his cancer patients. But one other thing you need to know too that's really significant, and that is, again, from him, when he measured the sugar after the 45 minutes, it had been reduced by about 30% because the sugar was used up in the metabolic transformation. You got to understand, we didn't have this 18 years ago. Once we started, and Bob was an early advocate also, we started to see 2 and 3 and 4 times the weight loss in the same period of time, which would make sense because you're now, you're ingesting something that is like, those amino acids are the only way that we make ourselves, including muscles, including tendons, including brain tissue, including everything in our body. So this was an enormous switch. And you all know after the 45 minutes, you can add ice. You can actually incubate it tonight, remix it, put it in the refrigerator, and drink it in the morning. I think all of you are doing that. But I want you to understand, I'm not opposed. If people want to make it and drink it in cold water, great. There's nothing wrong with that. It saved my life, for crying out loud. But I'm just saying, I'm obviously in a special position because he's my colleague. We wrote the book together, and I saw that he did the research. It's not like he made it up, and he had no dog in this hunt. So I know that was sort of a long dissertation before we're.
It's a wonderful story, but the people who are real nerdy that want it, that whole story, well, not the background to it, but the actual study of what he did with the incubating shakes is in Your Third Brain.
Yes, it is.
And I know that's the book, Your Third Brain. And the other thing is that we have always called it net protein utilization because the term net nitrogen utilization is trademarked.
Yep.
So it's not necessarily accurate if a scientist is watching this saying net protein utilization isn't exactly what's happening, but it's the net nitrogen utilization is the actual test.
Yeah, net protein utilization just means you can absorb, if you take meat, whatever you're absorbing, 95% of it, but that has nothing to do with what you're absorbing in the amino acids, which is the net nitrogen utilization, just to be clear. Okay, so you all
And
understand.
so for the audience, just tell them what amino acids are as compared to protein. Amino acids, we've heard of the building blocks to life, but it's not the protein.
Protein's a foreign substance to our body. As a matter of fact, what's not converted into amino acids turns into toxins. They're called nitrogen catabolites. Things like urea, which is what you get when you get gout, creatine, ammonia, and glucose. So it's really important. If you can drink a source that's almost pure amino acids, it's so, because the body, the kidneys have to deal with the waste that's not converted into amino acids. That's why when people are on kidney dialysis, they don't want to have a lot of protein, Bob, not because of the protein. And here's another thing you got to understand, everyone. The body stores fats and carbohydrates. It does not store protein, period. So if you don't have a great source of protein today, you're not going to make it up tomorrow. And amino acids, to give you an idea, we have 22,000 genes. The body makes, ready for this? 22,000 different proteins. The only way that occurs is with the amino acids. That's why you're seeing these incredible results, because you're giving your body, I mean, you'd have to eat like 10 steaks. I mean, it's crazy. And then the less wear and tear on your body. That's the other important thing, you know? And that's why I don't think people really understand two things. One, this is not a diet. And secondly, when people say, do I have to do this the rest of my life? You don't understand. You're on a journey. You stop doing this. And I'm not saying you have to do, 48 hours every single week, but to just follow through with the, if you just took 2 shakes a day, your life would be completely different moving forward. There's no stop. There's no end. There's no destination. It's moving forward. And I think many of you are already experiencing that. The mental clarity. I mean, all the things that are happening are just, it's just unfortunate. The time goes by so damn fast, and I got so much more that I'd love to share. But
so no, they'll let me go a little bit longer.
Okay. Ask for forgiveness.
So this is it's interesting because again, we're looking in hindsight. So we didn't know this as it was happening in real time.
No.
Tell the group, as Marco studied how he treated his patients, and tell him what his view was with Americans with carbohydrates and how what was his protocol like?
Yeah, he actually had a term. I had him on stage and he came out and he said, listen, everyone in this audience is intoxicated. I mean, this is like 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm looking around. I didn't think the bar was open yet, right? He said, no, you're intoxicated with carbohydrates. And they have such a grip on us, we don't even understand. We don't even know. And the thing is, I'll introduce a new term to all of you. Okay. 90% of the people in the United States, and even if they're working out, are in something called metabolic inflexibility. It's a fancy word meaning that 90% of the people, what they're burning for fuel are simple sugars and carbohydrates. Okay. That's why your shred is a big damn deal. Okay. What you want to do, you want to be in what's called metabolic flexibility. It simply means that instead of burning sugar and simple carbs, you're burning fat. And let me tell you why that's so important. We only store 2,000 calories in our body on a daily basis in sugar and carbs. In fat, you ready for this? We store 100,000 calories in fat. So what do you think we were meant to burn? So metabolic flexibility is what you're all experiencing as you're going through this when you're on the intermittent nutritional fasting days. But more important, here's what people understand. Those other 5 days when you're on shakes, they're maybe more important than the 48 hours because people fool themselves. They think, oh, well, I'm going to have pizza and whatever, and then I'm going to do 48 hours. No, that's not how it works because you're building up momentum in your body. I believe scientifically the reason that you're having these life-changing results on ER Shred, because you're starting already out drastically lowering the input. So really after about a day or so of not inversing, think about it. The carbs, you burned them up, they're gone. So now you're starting to burn fat. That's why so many of you are seeing like energy, but the mental clarity is coming from being detoxed from carbohydrates. Harvard has now come out with a new thing. They call it dopamine intolerance or resistance. You all heard of insulin resistance, right? So in your brain, in our brain, we have a neurotransmitter. It's called dopamine. That's what gives us pleasure, gives us the ability to concentrate, gives us energy, okay? But unfortunately, that is the culprit behind every addiction known to man. Cocaine, marijuana, methamphetamines, heroin, and sugar. Harvard estimates that sugar is 8 times more addictive than cocaine, but it goes farther. So in your brain, when we experience pleasure, the body produces these chemicals that go into these receptors. So think of it like plugging your iron into the wall, and they make you feel good. And then the body takes it back, so you can't be happy all the time. But here's what's important. Harvard's now proven that the overstimulation of the brain from sugar and simple carbohydrates has begun to shut these receptors down and creating dopamine resistance, just like insulin resistance. But here's the good news. Why is it 48 hours? Because that first day, now, but you guys have already got a running start. You're not introducing carbohydrates. Normal people, they got to get all the way through that to get to the, to the intermittent nutrition fasting days. So on intermittent nutrition fasting, you already have way less sugar and simple carbs. Take you about 20 hours to burn through those, and then your body will naturally gravitate over and burn the fat. But here's what else happens. After about 22 hours of no sugar, those receptor sites in the second 24 hours begin to become receptive again, a little bit. That's why when you have a shake after a 48-hour, it's the best damn tasting thing you ever had in your life, because your brain, with just a little bit of sugar, it's going, wow, I feel amazing. So you're not over, in essence, medicating yourself. But know one thing, sugar is a real addiction. It's like no fooling around. And now we know, based on Harvard studies, it's a huge, look around America and think about it. Why are we getting fatter and fatter and fatter? Because it's 50 times, we're storing 50 times more fat than we are simple carbs and sugar, and we can only store about 2,000 calories of that in our day. So in one day, you've used it all up. Now, if you're used to doing that, what are you going to eat the next day? Cookies and brownies and cornflakes and whatever else you're going to do, because that's your fuel. Your body never got to the point where you were burning fat, which is what we were meant to do. You've seen the people stranded, in the desert. As long as they had water, they can go 30, 40, 50, 60 days without food, because the body's going to burn those fat stores. That's why this works, by the way, from a scientific standpoint of view.
And I think that's important because, one, in terms of having the right mindset, is building belief. But part of that cornerstone, or one of the foundation pieces, is to have belief in the system itself and really understanding why. I'm glad you stated that today, or just shared that, because there were actually people in our Shred group community that were asking that, oh my God, I feel good. What's happening? Why am I happier? Or why is my mood shifting? Are other people feeling this? And I have seen that over and over again, especially when Sean does the testimonial call on Wednesday night. We have people, even some people, get teary-eyed. I did, being in the backyard, because I couldn't articulate or explain to my audience how good I felt, because you don't know how good you feel, right? How do you say that?
I say you don't know how bad you feel until you realize how good you can feel. And you got to understand, the reason you're feeling better is your dopamine receptor sites are much more efficient. That's what's going on. That's it. That's why. So it's not just some anecdotal or some placebo kind of thing. No, you're undergoing a real physical change. And like I said, it makes total sense to me, as in my research, that you're setting yourself up those first 5 days, or before, even the first 2 days, and then you've already drastically reduced, because you haven't introduced any carbohydrates on days 1 and 2. So already you've got a jump start. But my God, by the time you get to, say, days 10 and 11, when you've done the first 2 days and then 2 days of intermittent nutrition fasting in 5 days, you are really scrubbing those carbohydrates out of your body. Your mental clarity is coming from, you're no longer intoxicated. This stuff is doing horrible things to us.
We have, we're on, for a lot of us doing the actual April shred, we're on day 11. So I hope a lot of you are feeling much better this second cycle of the fast than you did the first. My suggestion is, and I think you have already brought this up, is that people want to know what's next. My guess is you're going to say, continuing with this type of an eating plan,
Right.
would be recommended versus going back and eating the old way or going back to quote unquote normal?
Well, here's what I'm going to share with you. This I can tell you from this. This study is going to say unequivocally, diets don't work, won't work, and can never work again. We now find diets are actually detrimental. I know you've all heard this, oh, it's unsafe to lose this weight quickly. That's now hogwash. The old calories in, calories out, hogwash, okay? What they found in the analysis on diets, that people, the only thing they lost was water and muscle mass. And yet on this, they didn't lose water and they gained lean muscle mass. So you're doing, there's nothing like this in the world. And remember, this is going to be backed up by, we already are clinical studies, but there's more coming that will even give you more confidence. Or if you're talking to a doctor, oh, you're just losing water weight. Totally bogus. No, on a diet, yes, not on this. So there's lots of really exciting things that are going to happen.
Oh,
That's why I feel the opportunity today is light years ahead of where I started with my first check of $7.50.
So that's kind of where I wanted to get at. So bottom line is the science is catching up to explaining why we feel so good. And
Correct.
Because of Sean and Crystal doing the elimination diet and figuring that out on the front end, that was genius when you combined it with the two. That's what I always call magic in the bottle, or it's magic. You would never, ever want to let it go. And, I would implore people, if you are doing the 11-day, what's next, stay with it and at least take advantage of the fact that you've got yourself to baseline and go real slow with introducing other foods, because you'll learn real fast what works, what doesn't. I want to wrap it up, Peter, with what you think the future is, but I also want to make one statement, and that is you never dreamed that you could make the income that you made today.
No.
Now, you have a passion. It's apparent. Everybody sees that. Everybody understands that. You've gone out and told the world and shared your story over and over again, and you use science to back that up. That's how you share.
Yep.
You've taught me to share results, and that's what we're about with ER Shred. But, let me ask you, though, you to this day still do not understand your back office with Isagenix, do you?
No, couldn't log in, couldn't order a thing. Don't even want to go near it. I don't care. It doesn't matter. All that matters are the results and sharing it, pay it forward. That's it. Everything else takes care of it. So I can't. I don't know. To me, it looks like a swap meet. My eyes glaze over. My mind doesn't work that way. Now you show me genetics and DNA transfer. Okay, I'm cool with that. But that back office is really a challenge for me. And, thank God they do have auto ship and it just comes.
The reason why I'm mentioning it is that when you're looking in terms of the it factor, in terms of what's required for me to be successful with this, it has really nothing about the how-tos. And I always have said that with shredders. By the way, if you haven't seen it, go to ershred.biz. That's our business site. But our whole purpose is to inspire you.
Right.
And not necessarily to teach you the how-tos, because it really has nothing to do about the how-tos. If I can find your passion and get you comfortable to share your story, that's all that's required. And I think that if I had turned my clock back 17 years ago and I sat there and said, good for you, Peter, you're making $500 a month, go for it, I'm just going to send you some people. I had zero interest in the business. Bad on me, because in hindsight, I look like a nutbag. I didn't see it. And what I'm hoping people understand is, yes, we want you to be healthy. We want you to be living your optimal life. That's our number one goal. But at the same time, if you're dreaming about other streams of income, I want you to look at my friend Peter Greenlaw, the Roger Bannister for me, breaking the 4-minute mile, or Sean or Tony and Randy Escobar. Think about what's possible. If you only dream, but you have the vision that you will do whatever is required. So with that said, now that you know what the ER Shred's about, you've seen the changes in Colin, you've seen what's happening on our team, what do you think the future looks like for our group?
I think explosive growth would be the only way that I could, based on experience and what we went through in the beginning, compared to you guys are producing results like we've never seen before. And I just think that if you believe, it's real simple. Name a business where results are not why you have a business. That's what I never get about, they talk about the comp plan. The comp plan only works if you have a great result and someone's willing to share and has that unshakable belief. I call it the reason to believe. That's why most of the time we say, just give us 4 days. Because on the 5th morning, it would be unshakable what they're seeing. They can't believe the numbers. They think their scale's broken. I mean, because there's nothing like this on the planet, at least at this point, that's ever produced these kind of results that are scientifically backed. Let me say one thing, okay? This is something I learned yesterday. You hear these other companies and they talk about, we have published studies, okay? What you don't know is there's an enormous difference. Publishing a study is not what's called a peer-reviewed published study. Because what these companies, I did one yesterday, I don't want to mention the name, they had a published study, but here's what they had. They had no visible outcome, meaning there was no evidence that it did anything. So you can publish the study, and a lot of these companies too, they'll say they're making up and saying, well, there were studies done on vitamin C and we have vitamin C in our product. No, that's not the same thing. So there's an enormous difference in research between peer-reviewed published studies and published studies. And you'll see so many of these companies, oh, we got published studies. Well, me being the researcher, I go to look at it and go, that's bull. That's crap. It's like, this is one thing that'll set me off and I'll probably get in trouble, but I don't care. But on TV, the one that makes me nuts, there's a couple of them that make me crazy. One is Nature's Balance, okay? They're advertising like hell on TV. Go to Better Business Bureau. They have a -DD rating. I mean, it's nothing. But here's the one that's worse. GOLO. Woo, GOLO, insulin resistance. Well, they published a study. They should be embarrassed. They had a study of 100 people after 12 weeks. The average weight loss using GOLO was 6 pounds in 12 weeks. Some of you lost 6 pounds in 4 days. And we're up against, that's our competition? Are you kidding me, Bob? That's why I'm so excited. Because we're producing results that no one could have ever imagined or seen or thought was possible. That's what you're dealing with. And don't minimize it. And here's the other thing I want to tell you. It is a lifestyle. There's no going back to where you started. There isn't. And as you introduce things, be careful, okay? Just find out. So if something doesn't agree, eliminate that off your list. But, I mean, I don't know what to say to compare it from 18 years ago to today. It's like a joke. It's like comparing a rotary telephone to one of these. I mean, 10 years ago, if anybody on this call, I would have offered you $500. I'd say, okay, all right. So, Dawn, tell me what this is and show me how to turn it on. I'll give you $500. No one, I mean, we had no concept of it. That's where we are today. Every diet out there, a pound a week. Even Harvard just came out. The big buzz was intermittent fasting, right? Harvard said 2 weeks ago, it's just a diet. You're going to lose about a pound a week. You might as well do Jenny Craig or Weight Watchers. There's nothing special about it. And if you do their version of water and lemon for more than 24 hours, you're doing real detriment to your body. But we have the real evidence. That's why the pay it forward concept is so important. I don't even know how the comp plan works. I don't care. I mean, obviously they pay me, but if I had to explain it, a director, the only director I know is the director of my television show. Crystal, I don't know any of those terms, but.
So if I
go ahead.
we can end with this because I know we're going over, but I want you to have you back. Sean will have you on. Maybe Jesse will interview you more on the product side. That would be a fun event. Jesse, I think Peter would be open to doing that if you're listening.
Oh, hell yes.
The thing that I do want to end this with is that I think when you're building we'll think of your life, Peter, where you're at today. You didn't look at the end result, but you took 1 week at a time.
Correct.
You took 1 month at a time.
Actually, probably 1 day at a time would be more accurate.
1 day at a time.
1 day at a time, yep.
And my point is for all of you on this call, I mean, for me, honestly, it wasn't until 2009 when Peter called me up and said, why don't you take this thing seriously for 6 months and see what happens? I had already been in it for 5 years. So imagine 5 years from now, Sean calls you up and says, hey, buddy, why don't you take a serious look at this ER shred thing? I mean, this is actually a really good business.
Right.
Things change, life changes. I just want people to be open to the opportunity. But I know one thing that makes this business model bulletproof is that if we get great results and then we get people to stick to it, in other words, they buy into the lifestyle, this is sustainable. If your products are paid for, no one would ever quit. And if that happens, if that just one little thing happens, everybody on this call has the opportunity that's unlimited.
Yep.
I mean, it's only limited to, the only limitation is your willingness to share, and how often are you willing to do it. And
it sounds too simple, but you're 1,000,000% right. I mean, I had no belief that what was going to happen. I went on it. I had an incredible result, and I guess I was too dumb. I just started. People said, "How are you?" And I'd say, "How am I?" I just lost 20 pounds in 18 days. I feel amazing. I didn't even realize that I was sort of creating what used to be called the 15-second story, which is now morphed into the pay it forward story. But I wish I had some fancy explanation, like, "Oh, check this box and this is how I did it." That's how I did it. Incredible result, and had a great story to share, because that's all I knew in the beginning. I didn't know any of this science, and that didn't matter. The result, the only thing that matters to you is your result. That's why this thing is working. That's why it's going to explode if you're willing. Now, look, here's the other thing. You cannot do your best. That will not get you to where I am. You got to do what's required, like Bob said.
So, Peter,
Period.
I want to basically, Sean just sent me a text, said, "Love you, Peter, and thank you. Nailed it. I couldn't be on the video. Thursday's coach night for soccer, and I'm still am, but I did have you in my ear. Metabolic inflexibility is a powerful phrase." We will have you back, Peter. I want to thank you again from the bottom of my heart for everything that you've done in my lifetime. You are my best friend. And on this journey, I feel so blessed. And it's exciting, because I look at myself now at 59 and say, man, we are just now getting started. So for those that catch the dream, have the aha moment, see the light, anything's possible. Everyone, thank you for joining me. I know we went a little over an hour tonight. Thank you. It was well worth it. No, we could go on for 5 hours. I mean, you've got so much in the last 18 years. It's crazy. But thank you, everyone. And we will have you back soon. And thank you, Peter.
All right. Good night, everyone. Good night.
You're an important part of your shred.
Cool. All right. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Good night, man. Bye-bye.